So thank you very much for joining us with the last panel of the morning. I think we have an interesting subject on the floor to discuss, a very thorny subject these days, and I think we have an amazing panel to discuss this with people who have significant experience in the sector. They've all worked for the past 20 to 30 years in market design and in regulatory affairs and in other aspects of the energy sector. And I think we are well equipped to discuss the matter of prices and markets. I think it's important to note that markets have been traditionally a supporter of the energy sector, supporting the transition, supporting the new investments. We have always relied on free markets to give the proper price signals, and I think we have seen maybe in the last months that this conventional wisdom has been debated to a certain extent. There are voices in the energy sector which are questioning the system in itself. They are questioning the market design. They are discussing about potential caps, or they are looking at very specific energy sources. They are looking at natural gas. They are discussing about potential capping and so on. And I think it's a right moment to look at these aspects after discussing in the morning about renewables and decarbonization, and to see what is the future role of the markets in the period to come. Allow me, before asking the panelists to express their views, just to make a short introduction of the panelists. Dr. Papalexopoulos is the CEO of ECCO International and has 20 years or 30 years of experience in market design in the United States and in Europe, and has been assisting various regulatory bodies in defining their strategy. We have Mr. Septimiu Rusu, who has for the last 20 years been involved in capital markets and commodity markets with Romanian Commodity Exchange. Lately, we have Mr. Nikos Frydas, who is the principal and vice president of Thornton, and he has been working for the past 20 years in the energy sector, advising clients and working also on regulatory matters. And last but not least, Mr. Emmanouil Kalaitzakis, which is a director of business development and strategy with the EnExGroup, also a seasoned expert in the sector. Without further ado, may I ask Alex just to start the round, please?
Thank you, Victor. We are market designers. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We're market designers. We have designed about 15 markets in North, Central, and South America, Asia, and Western and Eastern Europe over the last 25 years. Basically, we know what works and what doesn't. Discussions like today always come up when there is a crisis, and we try to see what's wrong with the market. The markets have been working well for so many years, and now we're trying to see what is wrong with the market. The markets today tell us one important thing, that there is so much reliance on one fuel, which is gas. So the problem is with the energy mix. This is a gas crisis, not a power market crisis. The volatility and the scarcity of the fuel of one technology in one market is being translated to a scarcity in another market. Gas has become the marginal producer in the power markets. The cost is very high, and that translates to very high prices. But that's how power markets should work. We should not like the markets when they produce low prices only. So we need to look at the signal, what the signal tells us. It tells us we need to reduce reliance on gas. That's what it tells us. The emphasis on renewables is a very important one. We need to accelerate that emphasis. on renewables, but at the same time, we follow, or at least what I advocate in the US, and fortunately the Biden administration, this is the philosophy is pushing now, an all-in approach. In other words, we need gas. The massive penetration of renewables cannot be done on its own. Every previous panelist talk about massive penetration of renewables. Every study we do globally tell us that after a certain point, let's say 50% or so, the cost of integrating renewables into the market is extremely high. The other thing that maybe you're not aware of is that the value of renewables, as the level of penetration increases, is reduced. The more solar and wind you put in the system, the value of solar and wind to the market is reduced. First of all, the only control we have today to manage that penetration is curtailments. In the middle of the day, what we have in the US, and we see it in some markets, Spanish market, a lot of solar, even in Greek market, we have what we call the dark curve. I don't know if you have heard the term, the dark curve. In the middle of the day, there is so much solar, you don't know what to do with it. You create conditions of overgeneration. What do you do there? You curtail. So there's so much free energy that is curtailed. Now, if you have an interconnected system, and that's the value of interconnections, you sell excess to other markets. But if the other markets also have excess, what are you going to do? Of course, the game changer is storage, but this is coming slowly. It will take years and years and years. So what is the fuel? What is technology that will allow us to integrate renewables in a massive scale in the next 3 years? Is gas. We have been doing studies with storage, developing hybrid plants with solar and storage. They are many years away, but that's the long-term solution. Now, so going back to the markets, the question is, what do we need to do with the market? Do we need to reform it? Of course, we need to reform it, but we need to decide what do we mean by that. With a massive penetration of renewables, we need to design and address new issues like flexibility, intermittency, and for that we need new ancillary services. So the revenues from all the participants in the market will change drastically. The revenues for energy will go down, the revenues for ancillary services will go up because there will be new ancillary services that I need. That's the reform I want. Also capacity markets. Capacity markets, many European countries don't want them. They consider state aid, but they have to bite the bullet to implement capacity markets as a secure mechanism for securing supply for the future. This is the reforms we're talking about. Out of EU, a lot of things are coming out that are really scary to me. They're talking about messing around with the clearing of the market, intervening in how markets clear. These are proposals that need to be killed. If we're talking about intervention in a power market to provide relief to customers, this is an important thing, because customers cannot pay these huge bills, especially in countries where the wholesale price is being reflected to a large extent in the retail bills that the customers receive. So what's the solution to that problem? Instead of looking at the box, the clearing, go back to your engineering class 101. There are inputs and there are outputs. The focus should be in the input or the output, not the box itself. Input, what are the inputs in markets? Offers, energy offers from all technologies, solar, wind, hydro, coal, gas, nuclear. These are the offers that go to the box. It's amazing to me that Europe does not have an ex-ante market power mitigation for physical markets, let's say for the day-ahead market. All US markets have very rigorous ex-ante power mitigation. What does it mean? When the offers come in from a gas power plant, for example, 800 euro, they go through a filter, actually a series of filters, These are all mathematical methodologies. And they decide if that offer has the potential for market power abuse. And there are technologies based on math to mitigate that offer. Only mitigated bids go to a clearing of a market. We call this ex-ante power mitigation. There's no market in EU that have ex-ante power mitigation. We're doing a project now with RAE, the local regulator in Greece, and hopefully will show to EU that they need to implement that for all the EU continent and ex-ante power mitigation. That's the measure we want. We don't touch the box. We touch the input with ex-ante power mitigation. If that's not enough to solve the problem and bring the prices to a level that reflects supply and demand, we work on the output. What is the output? The prices, the pricing policy. We have marginal pricing. We settled this 20 years ago. I was lucky enough when I was young doing this in the California market, the first market we designed to deal with two famous economists that became Nobel Prize winners later. Vernon Smith from Arizona State University got the Nobel Prize in economics, experimental economics in 2002. And to 2020, Bob Wilson, the professor, the auctions professor from Stanford. They both have spoke rigorously about the value of marginal pricing. When we designed the California market, politicians were coming and telling us, why don't you go to pay as bid? Why a bid comes at $20? Why you pay the most expensive generator offer, which is $50? Why you pay all this money? Well, we have written extensively on this subject. The only pricing mechanism that works, it is what we call incentive compatible. It does not give you the temptation to lie, is marginal pricing. We studied the pay as bid extensively and we have discredited, and no serious market, energy market today is using pay as bid. And when I hear discussions to go to pay as bid is a terrible idea. It will not reduce prices to consumers. People who play games is not transparent. There are inefficiencies, all sorts of inefficiencies, and those inefficiencies translate to higher cost consumers. And customers will never see that benefit that politicians expect. The second issue is extraction of windfall profits. People in Europe talk a lot about this, and many countries they are trying to implement it, or some have implemented it. In other words, put a cap per technology, renewables, another cap for gas, open or combined cycle, another cap for hydro or coal. And if they receive profits above that, they return this money. So you recycle the money, and the government has a fund, it gives the money some way to customers. It's a big deal to define the some way to customers, because we want to decouple if the money goes back to customers from consumption per kWh, because we don't want to encourage more consumption. We want to encourage conservation, which means we have to decouple those two. But going back to the profits are not really there. That's what I'm telling regulators in Europe and governments. The profits are not there. Why? Let's say the wholesale market clears at $700. It's very high. Everybody knows that. But who gets paid that $700? All generators. They have locked in through hedging instruments, CFDs, contracts for difference, most of their capacity with other strike prices, which are much lower. They don't get paid the $700. Otherwise, it's like going to Las Vegas. You cannot rely on the wholesale market when the prices are very low, below cost, or are very high. They want a predictable revenue source, and they do that through hedging. So when the governments expect for the generators to show these windfall profits, they are not there. And I can give you a lot of examples later from actual markets, like the Italian market, that they are not there. The other important problem is, in the models that Greece has, we design the Greek model and some other target models, there is a unit commitment, and the bidding is on unit basis. It's not portfolio like in North European countries. In North European countries, they submit an offer, an aggregate offer, and all the technologies, renewables, solar, wind, gas, hydro is under that curve, including sales and purchases. How you unwind from that curve the specific technologies to put a cap for each technology to recover those profits, it's an almost impossible task. And the other issue with that is cross-border subsidies. People don't realize that the market in Greece is cleared half of the time from generators in Bulgaria and Italy because the markets are coupled. So if an Italian generator gets extra profits by participating at clearing the market in Greece, how will go back to someone who don't have jurisdiction to extract profits? It has to become on a European level. It cannot become on a national level. So that's an important deal. So I see the implementation on a EU level of this extra windfall profits as problematic, not theoretically. Theoretically, it has been applied in many cases. Practically speaking, the implementation is problematic. There's another issue about long-term contracts. We have spent 20 years in long-term profits, long-term contracts. We support them, of course. They establish a discipline in the market. But we need to order why we don't have so many long-term contracts. The Greek market allows corporate PPAs with solar developers and industrials. Why they are not there? There are serious challenges and problems. How you do balancing, how you increase liquidity. There is always takes two to dance. So to have a bilateral contract with someone, I need to have an index, a price. Where that price is coming from, I need to have a liquid day-ahead market, and based on that price, I sign a contract with someone. In other words, it's a marriage. You need both markets, long-term and spot markets. In other words, I need hybrid markets to have a deal. The third issue is about gas. People are trying to put a cap in the TTF, in the Dutch exchange. There's no question something is wrong with that exchange. We look at the Brent, the index, the US market, it's in a certain level. The TTF was always a little bit more expensive because of transportation, other issues, but now it is out of whack. It's 5, 10 times, 7 times higher than the Brent. So something is happening in that market. It needs to be revisited. But putting a cap in a global market creates shortages. We need to be very careful how we apply caps that are not global, especially in a gas market that is a global market. So price caps are good temporarily as a very short-term measure, not as a long-term measure. It does not solve any problem. And actually, it can create shortages or even blackouts. I have first-hand experience. We apply caps in the California market in the energy crisis of 2000. In a matter of 2 days, generators left the California market and they went to other neighboring markets, so there was no cap. They chased high prices. As a result, we had the blackouts in California. The solution to me is basically ex-ante power, market power mitigation dimension, and on the other side, what we call price shock absorbers, or a soft cap. I have proposed this to the EU Commission to have a soft cap, which is a combination of a marginal pricing up to a certain level. And if a gas unit that is needed in the system bids very, very high, is not eligible to set the price for the system, but gets paid its bid. So it's a combination of a marginal price up to a cap and pay as bid for the expensive above that threshold. Thank you.
Thank you very much for, first of all, for the message that market works. And I think this is important. And also for highlighting some of the traps of the current strive to intervene on the policy level. Septimiu, would you like to comment on how do you see things going from the point of view of a commodity exchange in one of the biggest markets in this region? Thank you.
Well, it is simple. Since the regulation started, the protection of consumers, the market diminished. And is it okay for the consumer? Probably, maybe, because the price per kWh was kept at a certain level, but the wholesale market moved to OTC. So if you move a medium to long-term contract to OTC, and the supplier is then using a scheme for clawback in order to retrieve, funds from the government, and the government is delaying at some point the payments to the suppliers, and the national regulator has to approve them, and the consumer is kept at a certain level. For example, now there is a cap for consumer at 200 kilowatts, I think, in Romania. And if they just changed the legislation a couple of weeks ago, and if you go over that percentage, then you start paying the market price, but this is happening only to some of the suppliers, and other suppliers are providing a much, let's say, competitive price, but the consumer do not know about this. And then the suppliers are going to create a basket of OTC contract, which is not traded on the exchange. And if it's not trading on exchange, you don't know the price. And then NRA has to check the price, and then so on and so forth. We continue the discussion into what is happening is that we lost the market liquidity on the medium to long-term contracts, which reflected the price. They moved to the spot market. They moved to the small market because of the supplier of last instance, and they need to be active on that part. Also, they moved to the spot market because they need to have cash, because the government didn't give them cash. So I don't know. The market works. Yes, it's a problem with forming of the prices because of the mixture and stuff like that. We know because we are running mainly the gas market in Romania. So we know the problems about the gas market. We just applied a couple of days for NEMO, for power also. But on the gas market, we have this special situation in Romania where there are two big producers. Okay, there are local producers, the Black Sea gas, which is starting to come and stuff like that. So it's a different kind of situation than in other parts, probably, of Europe. But the basic idea is that we believe, at least because I cannot believe something else working at the exchange, that the market should work. The market should give a price. The price should be used, and especially for transparency reasons. And for the spot markets, of course, they become pinpoint and let's say support for different kind of hedging and other kind of long-term strategies. So for this, we are trying to build regional partnerships. In the last year, we're part in SIGAS project. We have a cooperation with EnExGroup, for example. We build derivatives with financial settlement on the Romanian gas. Probably will be used as a proxy for the EnEx if they would like to also comment. We have cooperation with almost all the exchanges, and in some part of the projects with the TSO. So it's a big issue with in Europe now with security of supply. It's a big issue with where is the molecule of the gas, how is going from east to west, and how can it go back from west to east and from south to east and something like that. So a lot of analysis are being done. The winter will pass at some point. The things will be, the market will be reassessed. And the market price is something that if you try to cap it on LNG, if you try to cap it on, I don't know, overall imports on Europe, and try to do it, there are a lot of analysis saying that, okay, at some point you can do it, but you have to consider the market are not medium to long, or they are also short term. And if you do it, you affect the balancing. The gas will not arrive from one point to another where it is requested in Europe. Even there are the interconnection capacity is not, let's say, theoretically unlimited, but there is something which is working, and the traders are using it, and the traders are using it to correlate the prices between different hubs. So more or less, if you try to repair in one point, probably there will a bubble in another part of the system, and so on and so forth. So it's complicated, and yet it can be solved. And now we are judging, as said at the beginning, from the crisis situation. Probably we shouldn't consider only from the crisis situation. We should consider what should be done for covering different scenarios and prepare a market for this. And then in the future, we won't have these kind of problems. More or less, this is our point of view from the exchange. But
thank you very much, Septimiu. I think it's always good to remind of cautionary tales that jumping to policy measures, although they seem justified from a certain point of view, sometimes they tend to have very complicated consequences. Nikos, I suppose that most of your clients are concerned these days with all this turmoil. So we are really looking forward to hear how do you see from your corner of the market things going on.
Thank you, Victor. And I would like to take the opportunity to also thank on behalf of my employer, Thornton, for the invitation. Indeed, at Thornton, we are currently very much involved in some of the cutting edge projects and problems we're facing. Some of those projects have already been discussed earlier this morning. I would like to start from a slightly different angle. And I think it's time to give a name to this energy crisis. Because every event becomes a crisis if we are unprepared for it. And I think the name I would give it to the current energy crisis in European markets is colossal failure on behalf of the European energy strategy, putting all the eggs in one basket. A hugely ambitious Energiewende, and then without reason, decommissioning relatively modern and safe nuclear power stations. Decoupling a few years ago, one of the most ardent proponent of competitive markets and big market, the United Kingdom, from the ECR region of Europe, just because there was a Brexit. The difficulties still that exist in coupling the Swiss borders in the middle of Europe, and of course the delays in also market coupling the Western Balkans. Those all things to me show a slightly narrow-minded how energy strategy is decided. And in the current crisis, because of the events, certainly it has shown that it had many errors, the energy strategy. Therefore, we cannot, because of mistakes committed, blame sound economic theory, as the previous speakers have emphasized. We cannot blame, because of mistakes, sound economic theory, which underpin the market design we have in Europe. And let me give you another example of how markets work. Before the conflict in Ukraine, we had in the second half of 2021 another energy prices crisis, because mainly of situation and conditions in the Asian energy commodities markets. And we had, of course, observed an extreme volatility of spot prices in the second half of 2021. How did the markets then, and what is the difference of the second half of 2021 with today? The forward markets, if you remember, in 2021, had the so-called backwardation. The future prices, the forward prices, were lower than the prompt, if you like, prices. What does this mean? That means that the market was working, and still we had a crisis at that time. The market calculated that as a response to these extremely volatile prices, there will be a response and the price of gas would fall in 23 and 24. Today, we view absolutely we witness absolutely the opposite, extreme volatility in the forward market as well. Jumping prices from week to week of differences of 200 euros and so on. That shows that the market is uncertain of how a natural response to the market signal will come, because nobody knows how through these interventions the market will work. And the more you tweak a sound market model, the more it becomes twisted. So I will agree with the previous speakers that the market model is not wrong. Strategy has failed, and we have to find solutions that must be temporary, There is no one silver bullet. There is not one solution that will solve everything. It is a set of solutions. Some of those interventions perhaps are temporary, perhaps are longer term. They have to be analyzed. They have to see how they fit with the slight differentiation from country to country market model. And of course, you cannot intervene only on one part of the market and shift the supply curve, like some of those measures that we have witnessed are trying to be imposed, but also you have to take care of the other curve. Otherwise, you basically are chasing your tail. So it's a complicated problem, it's a multi-parameter problem, but I would like to conclude that, in my opinion, the fundamental market design model is sound, and we have to see how we will overcome the current crisis because of the conflict without distorting it so much that we face then other problems.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Nikos, for highlighting this strategic aspect that actually that the markets are necessarily to blame, but also our strategic approach in the last decade in certain areas of the market. We go now to Emmanouil. May I ask how you and your peers are navigating this very complex system, and how do you see the future in the months to come or in the year to come?
Sure, Victor, thank you for the invitation. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm going to try and be really quick so we can move forward with lunch. So I would agree with yeah. Makuta? Okay. So I'm going to agree with the previous speakers, and wholesale electricity market design and marginal pricing has been working for over 20 years across the world. It saves us from a lot of mess that Dr. Papalexopoulos discussed in detail. The question is, what happened in this crisis? This is a fuel crisis, a gas crisis, that has led also to a spike in power prices. And in my view, this is a chicken egg problem, let's say, because if, 20 years ago, when we were planning power systems for the long run, we had anticipated this level of natural gas prices, everybody would agree. I think that the share in the mix of natural gas-fired power plants would have been much lower. So we are in an energy crisis. We are in an energy war, and the rules of engagement that apply to business as usual situations slightly change in this period. So what has happened so far with the Greek electricity market, and what interventions have taken place? As some of you may already know, there has been a price cap applied per technology to different technologies participating in the wholesale electricity market. There is one for renewables, another one for hydro, there is one for lignite-fired plants, and one for natural gas-fired plants. And the target of this intervention is to capture the majority of the inframarginal rents collected by inframarginal generators. Let's not forget that it is actually this type of income that facilitates investment into new generation capacity, especially inframarginal capacity, which is a substitute towards the natural gas plants that are driving prices today. This mechanism has allowed to the Greek government to support the Energy Transition Fund and subsidize electricity bills both for businesses and residential customers. Now, there is also something we need to discuss when it comes to subsidies, because we all understand that electricity is a needed commodity for everyone, but we cannot afford to completely distort the price signal, which should drive demand reduction, and instead of that, make the final consumer indifferent to how much energy, electricity they spend, they consume on a daily basis. Through the intervention, Athens has managed to fall below the mean of the household electricity price index. There is a huge support for households, and we think that this measure should be temporary. Maybe it was needed in this energy war that we are going through, but it's definitely suboptimal for the long run operation of the power system and for investment that needs to take place. Also, I would like to comment on a technicality, but a very important one, which is the fully transparent design of the wholesale electricity market in Greece, where the participation of generator owners is taking place on an asset basis and not on a portfolio basis. So this allows for a lot of information not to be lost. And actually, I realized that when we received a lot of incoming requests from energy exchanges across Europe that wanted to discuss a potential price ceiling that the EU would impose on how, guys, did you, apply this to your market? Because we don't know how to do it. And it was relatively easy for us because participation takes place in a transparent, asset-based manner. Now, when it comes to derivatives and long-term power products, the Florence School of Regulation organized an event yesterday, and they had two main conclusions. One of them was that spot power markets work and long-term derivatives markets do not work in Europe. This is true. We agree with that. We have also evidenced low liquidity in the domestic power derivatives market. And throughout Europe, with the exception of a few underlying assets, such as the base power product of Germany, for example, there is quite low liquidity. So at the Hellenic Energy Exchange, we are working on a turnaround strategy for the derivatives market right now. But we're always having one eye on what the EU decides moving forward. For example, we We became aware recently of a discussion on whether bank guarantees could serve as a collateral for derivative products in Europe. That was not the case before, but everyone is trying right now to give alternatives to market participants in derivatives markets to perform more trades. Other things that we are working on is offering more products on our platform, improving its connectivity, revisiting with our clearing, let's say, counterparty margin requirements. All these discussions take place across exchanges across Europe. There was a particularity in the Greek market, though, that I would like to mention, and it comes through the readjustment clause, the infamous rita anaprosarmogis that the Greek people in the audience understand, which was a common practice among utilities to transfer risk that they should be hedging and mitigating to the end customer, which said that for each billing period, your price is indexed on the wholesale electricity market price. So I don't think that was, I think, and that's a personal opinion, that is part of the business of suppliers to hedge risk for their end consumers. That's the economic efficient manner due to aggregation, and let alone the fact that, you know, households don't have ways to manage that risk, you know. So that was this type of business strategy, let's say, worked against the derivatives markets because the suppliers needed no more, you know, to hedge their risk. And I would like to close my my part on this discussion with the discussion on setting a price cap on natural gas. I'm not an expert in the field, but it's quite hard for me to grasp how, for a global commodity that Dr. Alex also mentioned, we're going to set a price cap that is going to work. How? Without, you know, putting in danger security of supply. If we discuss alternative ways to do that, like the Iberian Peninsula model, where, you know, you set a price cap ceiling for natural gas-fired power plants, and then you subsidize to the plants the, you know, the loss they have from the actual purchase of the fuel that they burn. What we see there is that, okay, through the lowering of infra-marginal rents, you get some benefit for the final customer. It's not as clear and direct as the model that has been applied to Greece, the temporary model, okay, on one hand. And on the second hand, on the other hand, you have a price signal that makes no sense. I mean, if you look at a price map throughout Europe, the prices on the Iberian Peninsula make no sense for anyone nowadays. And we think that it was some kind of intervention that the EU agreed with due to the low interconnections between Iberian Peninsula and the rest of Europe. So I'm not arguing here that our model is better than that, but I'm saying that I don't know how, you know, a price cap would work. What has been discussed recently is to tax profits upstream in the oil and gas industry. I'm not sure. I mean, I see two problems with that. That would mean less investment upstream in oil and gas. You know, that is necessary to drive the price of the commodity down. And the second problem is that oil and gas majors have been very active investing in renewable technologies as well. So that business also would be, you know, hit by taxing their profits. That's
Thank you very much for this explanation and detailed account on how EnEx is contributing actually to mitigating the crisis and addressing certain issues. I think we had a very interesting discussion, an in-depth discussion with regard to the role of the markets. We have seen many points of view and important subject touched. So for the last question, may I ask from each of you a very short comment? What do you think would be really desirable, like a top action to be taken in the near future, or if you want something to absolutely avoid in the near future? Because I think we are really in the peak of a crisis. We are in the middle of a very important regulatory discussion. So if you could just point out something that you really think it's important either to do or actually to avoid in this very important discussion. Alex, would you like to start?
Thank you, Victor. Very fast. What we should avoid? Number one, suspend the markets. Even that was discussed. We need markets more now than ever before. Number two, suspend the CO2 addition in the market because that will go against the decarbonization goals. We should not do any of that. We should not split the market. The Ministry of Energy of Greece is proposing something like that. It kills the most important principle we have been using for 20 years in designing markets globally. This is the maximization of social welfare. What we need to do? Put ex-ante market power mitigation for the offers that come in before they go to clearing. EU should develop those methods that have been using in the US for at least 20 years after the California energy crisis. On the output side, what I support is what we call price shock absorbers or soft caps, which is a mix of marginal with pay-as-bid pricing, and pay-as-bid only for units that are above a cap. This is a method that has worked. We applied in California during the energy crisis, and you avoid these complicated, inefficient mechanisms of recycling money with trying to extract windfall profits. It's inefficient. It has complexities. In some markets in Europe may not work. It will work for our market because it's unit-based and we have a fully transparent market. But if everything is hidden below a curve, it's very difficult to develop caps for each technology. These are the things I think we should do.
Thank you very much. Septimiu?
Okay. Yeah. I think what we should do is not us, but basically the decision makers, politicians, not to fall in love with funny ideas, destroying a market that was built in 20 years. Because it's easy to fall in love with such ideas. And the ideas might come from different areas, and there are a lot of ideas about this vehiculated in the different mediums of discussions, and in general the market, it's some kind of basis of capitalism. So if you try to destroy it and try to regulate it and try to adapt it and tailor it, it will readjust. This is what will happen. It will not disappear, it will readjust, and readjusting under different principles of price formation and identify where is the real need and creating welfare for the consumers will probably result in less efficient, let's say, solution. Of course, there are some things that can be done and they are being studied at European level. Probably some solution will be found, but not to change the fundamentals.
Thank you. Nikos?
Yes, with regards to what I would like to definitely avoid are, it was been mentioned the proposal for the dichotomy of the market, the splitting of the market. I think this is a very deep operation. It goes to very fundamental structural and operational procedures of the markets. And indeed, for us, of course, because it has been also inspired from the Greek market model, but for Europe, that would mean also going all other European markets back to basically mandatory pool. I don't think it can be. We must avoid such structural interventions, so that, of course, there is no easy solution, and most probably there will be a set of interventions, but on a temporary basis, so that we can return when the markets resume their normal function, which is to convey the appropriate signal of what should be the right investment, what should be the right technology, and what should be, of course, the right fuel.
Thank you very much. Excellent point. Emmanouil, would you like to close, please?
What I wish to avoid is having a cascade of inefficient interventions that miss the big picture and do not solve the problem. We need to, to be calm and design the electricity markets of the future, the way, they should be. I mean, what I mean by that is, they're working fine, but, any adjustment that we make has to be, really based on solid, facts and science, and not just, some kind of, response. And at EnEx, we are trying to, we're trying to work on our derivatives market. This is something that we want to improve, but in the general context of, the functioning of those markets at the EU level. So that's something that needs to be much better in the future, I think, much more liquid. And we're putting our attention there.
Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking this panel for the effort they put into this discussion. And thank you all for the intervention.